All right, we're starting over. Today we're going to do variation problems. And there's three basic types. There's direct variation, which is multiplication. There's inverse variation, which is division. And then there's joint variation, which is multiplication of two things at least. Normally, it's just two things. Every now and then, they might give you more than two things, but the majority of the time, you're just multiplying two things. But in each of those, I have highlighted a K value. Okay, it's called the constant of variation. It's in every stinking problem. And these are all word problems, basically. And you won't be told that there's a constant of variation in there. You're supposed to know that. Okay? You will see such and such varies directly as such and such. When you see that word varies, you're supposed to know that that K value will be in the problem. Whatever comes after varies, direct or joint, will tell you if it's multiplication. If it says varies inversely, it'll tell you to do division. Okay. Why isn't that working? Start it over. All right. All right. So don't forget the K value, okay? So, example 1. The distance sound travels varies directly as the time it travels. If sound travels 1,340 meters in 4 seconds, find the distance sound will travel in 5 seconds. Okay? So, the distance. I'm going to use D for distance. Sound travels varies equals K, and then directly means times as the time. So I use T for time it travels. So sound travels 1340, that's a distance. In 4 seconds, that's a time. All right, usually these have two parts. In the beginning of your homework tonight, you're only going to be writing the equations. And then they'll tell you just to find the K value. And then you'll have to do like these. You'll have to actually find an answer to the problem. But the first step here is to find K. You guys know that you're going to divide both sides by 4. And you'll get 335 is K. Meaning it travels 335 meters per second is what's happening here. But then what you do is answer the question. What's the distance? Find the distance sound will travel in 5 seconds. What you do is you take that 335 and substitute it in for K, and then times 5 seconds, and that comes out to 1,600 something. 75? Thanks. So in 5 seconds, it goes 1,675 meters. So when you get to the actual word problems, there's two parts. Find the K value first, and then use that K value you just found to answer the question. Questions on that? That makes sense? All right, you guys try this one then, please. Example 2. The distance that an object falls from rest varies directly as the square of the time t that it has been falling. If an object falls 64 feet in 2 seconds, how far will it fall in 10 seconds? write your first equation. Ashton, what do you think that is? What are you going to use for distance? Yeah, okay, but D, right? Which is 64 feet, right? And it says falls from rest varies equals, remember what letter we got to put in all these? Okay. Direct means multiply or divide? Yeah. And then it says the square of the time. All right, so what's the time when it goes 64? 2? So what's K? Anybody? 16, good. 2 squared is 4, so we're going to divide by 4 again. So K is 16. So how far will it fall in 10 seconds? So I put 16 in for K and 10 in for T. Liam, what is that? Well, if it was 110, but there's 210. Right. And that's feet on that one. Chris, that makes sense? Tackle. Tackle walls. Both of you. You scored this weekend?
Yeah.
Nice. Good job. Because of your center?
On draw left. No, I was left guard.
You were left guard?
Draw right.
Was it a quarterback draw? Was it a quarterback draw?
Yeah, draw right, but I created a scene, they cut it back. And
So you had good vision then, huh?
Balls is the best running quarterback.
yeah, we went to Lamar Jackson divided by.
Every time he gets in there, he's just running.
What do you mean divide?
All right. Hey, you guys got 10 games in now, didn't you?
Yeah.
That's good. Compared to what you thought in early August,
I
huh?
honestly thought for a second we weren't even gonna have to.
Yes, I
All right, making sense? Those 2 examples? All right, let's look at the next example. The volume V of a sample of gas varies inversely as the pressure P. So who thinks they can give me the equation for that? The volume V of a sample of gas varies inversely as the pressure P.
Isn't V1 equals VQ T2?
Yeah, you're thinking of, chemistry or physics. But what, you see that word varies, what letter you got to put in there? Okay. Inversely means to do what? Divide. Yeah, so this is our equation. V equals K divided by P. So it says the volume of a gas in a J-shaped tube is 75. That's supposed to be milliliters, actually. I made a typo there. All right. So 75 milliliters. So I'll put 75 in for V. When the pressure is 1.5 atmospheres. So what am I going to do with the 1.5? Multiply, right. So when I multiply both sides, oops, I didn't like that. When I multiply by 1.5 both sides, we get K is 112.5. All right, we're half done. It says find the volume when the pressure is increased to 2.5 atmospheres. So I want to find V, and K is 112.5, and instead of 1.5, it's 2.5 now. Just do that math. And that comes out to 45. And that should have been milliliters, not millimeters. I need to fix that. Does that make sense? So since it said inversely, or varies inversely, we do the division. Okay? How about you guys talking me through this one? The intensity of music, and thinking about direct and inverse. In direct variations, as one value gets bigger, the other gets bigger. As one gets smaller, the other gets smaller. But on inverse, as one value gets bigger, the other one gets smaller. They go in opposite directions. That's why it's called an inverse variation. Which makes sense here. Intensity of music is inversely proportional to the square of the distance from the music source to a listener. So if I'm right up against the loudspeaker, that distance is really small. How intense is it? Pretty high, right? The further away, as my distance gets bigger, further away from that speaker, the intensity will go down because I'm not right up against it. Right? So I'll use I for intensity. Now, instead of saying varies inversely, it said inversely proportional. That's the same thing. For directly, they might, for direct inverse, direct variations, like varies directly, sometimes they'll say is directly proportional to. So sometimes you'll see inversely proportional, directly proportional. It's the same thing. So again, is inversely proportional, that's K, it's in all of these, remember, inverse divided by. How do I do the square of the distance? How do I write that? Square of the distance. Do I put a square around the D? Is that how I do it?
I think you could. Well,
Chris?
right side.
Well, it's just a D squared, right? That's all. Now, some of these might say square root. Then we use the square root symbol, right? So pay attention to your reading. All right, so the intensity was 10 to the negative 2. Not 10 squared, but 10 to the negative 2, which is 0.01, yeah. Watts per square meter at a distance of 12 meters. So remember, it's 12 squared. So what do I do to get K alone? Multiply by K squared, right? Or 144, or 12 squared on that? All right, so that's K, and that's 0.01 times 144 is 1.44, I believe. Okay, so now we got our K value, our constant of variation, constant of proportionality. What is the intensity when we're 10 meters from the speaker? So we got our I, what is that when our distance is 10, and we put the 1.44 in for K. So that's 100. What's 1.44 divided by 100? Good. 0.0144. And again, that's watts, whatever that means, watts per square meter. Music people might understand that. Intensity of music. Okay. These making sense? Any questions? All right, one more. So direct means to multiply. Inverse means to divide. What does joint mean again? No. Means multiply. This is going to be two things you're going to multiply after your K. All right. So this is a cost of insulating the ceiling. So I use C for cost. Varies equals K. Jointly, that means I'm going to multiply two things after that. And in this case, jointly as the thickness, how thick your insulation is going to be, I'll use it T for thickness, and the area of the ceiling, how much area you're covering. So there's our equation. Does that make sense to you guys? So when you see jointly, you're going to multiply a couple things, that's all. Every now and then you'll get one like this. It'll say such and such varies directly with this and inversely with that. So you have multiplication and division in the problem. or it might say jointly and inversely. So be multiplying a couple things and then dividing. But you only need 1K if that happens. You don't need 2K. All right, there's always 1K in the problem. So it costs $175. I put that in for cost. For a 4-inch thick insulation and 2,100 square feet. All right. So what do I do with that 4 and 2,100? Multiply and then divide it, right? Which is what, 8,400? So my constant of variation is 175 divided by 8,400. 0.02083 repeating. 0.02083 repeating. All right. What's the cost? When you have 6-inch thick insulation and 2,400 square feet. So I just multiply all those together. And I think that comes out to $300, if I remember right. Again, you already have that number in there, so just go times 6 times 2,400. There you get your 300 there. So the first couple problems are just writing the equation. The next couple problems you're finding just K. Then the rest of them you're actually doing what we did here, finding K and answering the problem. Those make sense to you? Variation? Direct is what? Multiplication, inverse, divide, joint, multiply by a couple things, right? There you go. Good job today, like always. So we're putting those 5 types of inequality we did last week with these for our quiz on Friday, this week.
What number?
3 to 36 by 3, 3, 6, 9, 12.